I was privileged to attend sessions as part of the NASPA conference this past month, and I wanted to highlight something that I learned. NASPA, as you may or may not know, is the National Association of ESEA State Program Administrators, essentially educators supporting schools that run federal grants programs, which all the schools I support do. And there were some incredible presentations. I'm going to highlight just one today because Lord knows we could be here for hours. But it was a partnership I learned about between the Puerto Rican Department of Education and Khan Academy. Two things I knew about, right? I know about Puerto Rico. I know that they have a Department of Education, and I know about Khan Academy, but I didn't know about this particular partnership. Dr. Gustavo Bobones from the University of Toronto, Dr. Damaris Varela Velez of the Puerto Rican Department of Education, and Ms. Kelly Hill from Khan Academy spoke about a program they just finished the first year of, in which they offered intensive mathematics professional development and support to teachers from Puerto Rico. If you're not familiar with the incredible amount of challenges that face Puerto Rican schools, in addition to the COVID-19 pandemic, they have also been dealing with the physical ramifications of hurricanes and earthquakes that have plagued the islands in the past several years. All of this has led to intense learning loss, with reports that over 90% of students are not at grade level in mathematics. As a result, they developed this partnership called the Academica project, Application of Technology to Mathematics Teaching. The methodology included voluntary participation in which teachers would receive additional support in the form of professional development and weekly virtual mentorship sessions to improve mathematics instruction through the use of Khan Academy's mastery-based mathematics program. The program had just concluded their first year of implementation, so the data is still being collected and rolling in, and they're already making adjustments to how it's being used in its second year of implementation. And the challenges that the teachers and schools faced were ones that I'm sure many of us can relate to: lack of reliable access to technology at home and at school, general lack of interest from teachers or students or their families, student engagement, etc. But one factor, characteristic that made my eyes go wide was the fact that while students in the program showed a statistically significant improvement in mathematics scores at primary school levels, the results at the middle school level were not as pronounced. That was not the shocker for me. The exception to that was middle school students who were enrolled in an additional requirement. Each week, an auto-generated email would go out to the parents of those students. And the result of those students vastly outperformed the other areas. And I found that so interesting, to the point that I was immediately asking questions at the session, and I was thinking of ways to implement this with the schools that I work with. Because a lot of us have had issues with middle school students having, lost. I think we talked about recently, attendance is a big issue at middle schools. General engagement is a huge issue in our middle schools. How could just this one small factor make such a huge difference? And we're not talking about weekly meetings with the families. It was a simple auto-generated email that went out every week to their parents. I was so interested in this, and the presenters themselves said they were really surprised at the results of these data, and they will be increasing the number of students whose parents are contacted to see if this result can be expanded to more students across the island. I know I'm looking at ways to incorporate this into my practice to see if we can replicate those results. But I found that to be so fascinating and wanted to share. Not only, of course, I think so many of us are familiar with Khan Academy as an entity and what it can do, but I'm not sure if people are aware of how much support, I guess, they're willing to give schools and teachers. And did we mention, if you don't already know this, Khan Academy is free. That is part of their mission, is to provide free education as a human right. I think that's an incredible mission, and I'm really excited to see this initial report from the Puerto Rican Department of Education. And I think my mind was, of course, inspired in thinking, how can I put this into practice where I work.
That early data set about the parental notification email is pretty wild to me, and the implications of it are staggering. As you noted, it's a pretty light intervention, right? We're not talking about weekly parental meetings. We're not even talking
Yeah,
about personalized emails to the parents that,
no,
like the teachers, it's just an auto-generated email, those things that we probably get 10 or 20 of in our own inboxes every
I
day.
know.
And the data seems to suggest that that's even that little intervention is enough to trigger what is one of the most powerful forces in education and creating better education outcomes, parent involvement. And that's really exciting. It's the fact that we can trigger that kind of parent involvement that leads to good outcomes with just a auto-generated email.
I mean, I
That's an
can
exciting prospect.
imagine, and this was not reported, but I can imagine that, especially when we're talking about middle school aged children, parents having any right? Any bid where they can take that information and communicate with their children. Hey, I saw an email about your math program. What's going on in math?
Yep.
Just that level of accountability to ask a question, to have that connection. I was really truly shocked at the results when you look at how, excuse me, when you look at how overall, the middle school results were not impressive. They really were not. They didn't make a statistically significant difference between students who received the treatment, for lack of a better term, right? Using my research words, who received the treatment versus those who did not. So to see such a significant jump based on this one characteristic, this one factor alone, I think we have to pay attention to that.
And one thing we don't want to lose sight of in a lot of the many great insights that you brought up there in that article is the power of mentorship when it comes
Mm,
to professional development. Right?
absolutely.
We think of oftentimes we think of professional development as like a one-time intervention. You sit in a conference room somewhere or a convention center. Somebody talks to you for a half day about something, and then you're back off doing what you're doing. But I'm sure your own experience bears this out, that the most effective way to professionally develop teachers is to make it an ongoing experience for them. And one-on-one mentoring can be a powerful force in that regard, so that you know that after that initial PD session, you're not on your own. You have an experienced master teacher or some other professional who's going to be there with you, keeping tabs on you, making sure you have the resources you need, somebody to bounce ideas off of. I mean, I imagine that was a critical component in the success that they saw in the early grades.
I think it's probably really helpful. I can't say for sure because they didn't talk about that specifically, but I was really impressed with the level of commitment because you're right. Usually, when we put professional development plans in place, we don't have that intense level of follow up. I think when we're developing professional development, it's a standardized, like it's a standard operating procedure to have for every 3 hours of in person development, you have 1 hour of follow up. But that 1 hour of follow up is not with the person doing the developing. That's like on your own, follow up, do some homework, fill out a survey. So
Sure.
the fact that they're doing this level of communication and support, and I should say, what they did mention about the mentorship was not only continued professional development in that, is to really listen to the challenges that the teachers were facing. And I think that's tremendous too, because they were learning. Okay, they even mentioned, I think, that at the beginning, the recommended dosage, again, I'm using that term because it's the research term for it, but the recommended dosage, I think, was 2 hours. Oh, I'm struggling. Might have been 2 hours a week of Khan Academy in the
Hmm.
schools. And they quickly realized that was not going to happen. Or I struggled only because now that I'm saying it out loud, it might have been that they recommended 2 hours a day, but that as a teacher, I can tell you that's unrealistic for sure. But I think it was 2 hours a week. And they started realizing all of the challenges that went along with that. Some of them physical, right? Like there's just not enough computers. There's not enough bandwidth to get kids onto the computers for that long. Some of it was just, you know, kids get tired of being on the computer. That's not really helpful. So helping them to understand how to better integrate what they were doing in the classroom and how to use this virtual tool to really augment their instructional practice was, I think, a really important learning process for the researchers and Khan Academy and the teachers who were in the program.